as my colleagues would tell you, me and IT are not that good friends. So in terms of the National Education Nature Park, there's two things I'd like you to bear in mind throughout the next 25 minutes or so. So a couple of facts, if you like. One is that if you added all the outdoor space in schools, colleges and nurseries in England, this is just England, it would equate to twice the size of Birmingham. So that's one fact, bear that in mind. The second one, there was a study done in February of 21 about the economics of biodiversity that states that the UK is one of the most nature depleted places in the world. So if you bear those things in mind as I go through, and maybe in terms of any questions at the end. So the National Education Nature Park is a 5-year programme. We launched in October of 2023, so just over 18 months old currently. It is part of the Department for Education's Sustainability and Climate Change Strategy, linked to climate action plans, which I will touch on shortly. It is led by the Natural History Museum, which I think is a fantastic partner. They lead on the community science part of the project, again, which I'll touch on shortly. The engagement side is led by the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society. And let me go back on that. Apologies for that. And I work for an organisation called Learning Through Landscapes, and we lead on the engagement in the East and the West Midlands. The other main one to mention on there is Esri UK. I'll touch on the main programme aims. They lead on the mapping side. So all the stuff I'm going to mention about mapping, they lead on that, and they work with Ordnance Survey and other organisations as well. As I said at the start, the UK, unfortunately, is one of the most nature depleted places in the world. So we want to make a real difference in schools and colleges and nurseries to increase that, one of the Nature Park goals. The second one is to improve green and digital skills. So those green skills are maybe the obvious ones in terms of horticultural skills, identification skills, but also those transferable skills, team building, team working, reporting, analytical skills for those young people. And the digital skills, we're very aware that digital is a huge part of today's world, and it doesn't replace being outside in those skills, but we are incorporating those in terms of those mapping. We want young people and adults to make a real connection with nature. The reason I do what I do is, apologies for that again, is because my primary school was right next to a nature reserve. I really enjoyed it, had a real connection with nature, those emotional connections with nature, and that's why I do what I do. So if you've had that connection when you're young, that will stay with you or come back. And I think it's universally accepted that being outside in nature is good for young people's and ours mental and physical well-being. So they're the Nature Park goals. None has one more credence, more strength than the other. They are all equal. As I said, it is commissioned by the Department for Education as part of that strategy. It's free for every setting in England. So that's nursery, primary, secondary, and further education. That map on the right shows settings, those little green dots shows settings that have signed up and mapped their outdoor space. So the boundary. So currently we've got over 5,200 settings that have signed up. Not all of those have mapped their boundary currently. As with any sort of nature conservation site management program, the first thing you do is to see what you've got before you make any changes about that. So in terms of that increasing biodiversity in those educational settings, before they do any of that, we need to know what they've already got. And as it says on there, it's contributing to proper science. So our colleagues at the Natural History Museum, that data will inform what we're going to do in this country in the future. So now, hopefully this will work. I'm going to show a short video, about 4.5 minutes, 5 minutes long, that will demonstrate how the program works. It'll touch on a thing we call the 5-step process, and then we'll move on from that as well. Please tell me if this doesn't work.
The National Education Nature Park empowers children and young people to make a positive difference to both their own and to nature's future. And we want you to get involved. Together, we are creating a network of green spaces across England by boosting nature on school, nursery and college grounds. Young people lead the way in improving their sight for both people and wildlife, all while connecting to nature and developing skills for their futures. Every small act makes a big impact. The growing National Education Nature Park is displayed on an online map, showing the collective difference everyone is making. So, how does it work? You'll follow a 5-step cycle to boost nature on your site, which can be built upon year on year. Let's look at each of these steps in a bit more detail and hear from those who have been getting stuck in. Step 1. Getting to know your space. The first step is all about exploring and learning about your outdoor space. Through creating a map of your site, you'll discover what's there, what's not there, and how people and wildlife experience it. You'll begin to form a closer relationship with your environment, understand your starting point, and the strengths and opportunities your site has.
We mapped our site, first of all, to have a look what we've got available. And then we've looked at all of the different activities to think, what have we got for nature in our school ground, but also what we could improve.
Step 2. Identifying opportunities. Next up is asking the question, where do we want to be? Using information you've already collected, you'll consider what wildlife and people need to thrive, and create a vision of what you'd like your spaces to be like for yourselves and future generations.
Some areas were just grass that was all cut to the same length, but we've planted so many more trees, we've put so many more little structures in place so that we can get outside whatever the weather, and we've let lots and lots of it grow so that we're rewilding the site, but we're also rewilding our children as well.
Step 3. Making decisions. Now it's time to ask, how do we get there? We've got a range of habitat suggestions for you to choose from, depending on your goals for your space, from growing pollinator-friendly plants to creating rain gardens. You'll work together to make a plan of how you're going to do it, and how you'll get your school, nursery, or college community on board to help.
Well, we just listen to what areas get complaints about, and see if there's nature-based solutions we can use to fix those problems. So tech 1, 2-1, how can we fix that? Put a green wall there. The green walls definitely reduce the temperature a bit in the tech zone. I think there's less people complaining about how warm it is in there now.
Step 4. Making change happen. It's time to put the plan into action. You might be planting, growing, building, fundraising, and much more.
So we've got dead hedges like the one right there. We've made some other ones that are smaller bugs. And we've got hedgehog homes around the school too that we've also made.
Step 5. Recording change. How is nature and wildlife improved? How do people use the space? Does the school community feel happier and healthier? This final step in the cycle is all about monitoring the difference you've made. It's also an opportunity to celebrate and share all of your amazing work.
Initially, the Eco Club themselves, they were really excited to get involved. Other students around the school have commented because they can see the green wall around there and during their break times and stuff. They've also had access to this garden. So yeah, they've all had access to these green spaces that we've put in.
Everyone can take part, no matter the size, shape, or type of outdoor space you have. You don't have to be an expert, and it can be linked to all curriculum subjects. The more people that get involved, the bigger impact we can have for both people and the planet. So start your nature park journey today.
Cool. Hopefully that did work. It worked for me. So touching on that 5-step process that was mentioned in the short video, for each of those steps of the process, we have curriculum linked resources that are searchable by the subject, the key stage, the length of time, and also which part of that 5-step process it relates to. Loads of resources on there. As you can see, there's just a few examples which we'll touch on later as well. As I said at the start, a big part of the programme is for schools, nurseries and colleges to map their outdoor space. Currently, DFE, the Department for Education, haven't got that information, so it is real data that's going to help us in terms of nature conservation in this country. The first step would be to map their boundary. So you can see that school there's mapped their boundary, that including their main part of the building as well. On the right-hand side, that donut, if you like, shows the habitats they've mapped and the percentage of those within their outdoor space. So the amber colour is grass and wildflowers. Natural History Museum decided that there are potentially 8 types of habitats on school grounds, which are, if I can remember all these, I have to count them on my finger: ground without plants, trees, hedges and bushes, water, vertical surfaces, microhabitats such as bird and bat boxes, grass and wildflowers and food. So we're asking the students, the young people, to lead on that with the teachers and practitioners to map what they have already, to identify where they could make those improvements that were mentioned in that short film then. For each of those 8 habitat types, there is an activity for the young people. This one is regarding trees that you can see at the moment. A guide for the teachers, the practitioners, in terms of all information and stuff they need to do that. And then there's a flow chart to complete so they can decide what type of tree habitat that is. That's the picture on the right. As an example, if it was a single tree, they would go down that flow chart to decide it was a single tree and then map that on their map. And like I say, for each of the 8 habitats, there is an activity guide for the teachers, an activity for the children and young people, and a flow chart to key out what type of habitat that is. I mentioned at the start, this is part of a bigger scheme for the Department for Education. They suggest that every education setting should have a climate action plan by this year, 2025. It's not overly descriptive, and in terms of that date, it could be the end of this academic year, it could be the start of the next academic year, or the end of this year, this calendar year. The 4 pillars on there, as you can see on the screen: biodiversity, climate action, adaptation and resilience, and decarbonisation. The nature park is very much the biodiversity one, because that makes sense. It's very clear to that. But we say and we suggest that we can support those other pillars as well. Climate education, as we touched on, with the resources, the mapping, adaptation and resilience, and decarbonisation, very much so. That picture on the right is the same one that was in the short video. So that is the Co-op Academy of Manchester, so a secondary school in Manchester, the Green Wall. So that is their tech, as the young person suggested, their tech room, and it was very warm. It was south-facing. They put some green walls up, as you can see there, relatively narrow. They did have to replace some of the plants using the RHS plant finder to get the most appropriate ones. What they did find, though, was they used an infrared camera, and where those plants were, where those green walls were, it was 10 degrees cooler than the rest of that building, the rest of that south-facing wall and windows. So it does make a real difference in terms of what we're doing. All the stuff was done by the young people. The beds that you can see were made using recycled pallets. They chose the plants. They did have a grant from the Nature Park, which we'll touch on at the end as well. So within the climate action plans as well, the DFE, the Department for Education, have what we call sister projects. So there is Climate Ambassadors, Let's Go Zero, and Sustainable Support for Education. Climate Ambassadors are professionals in the trade, if you like. So it could be an ecologist that sign up via the STEM learning platform to support settings along their climate action plan journey. So it could be a setting wanted to put in a pond. They will get an ecologist or maybe someone who works for the Wildlife Trust to support them on that, and that is free for that school. Let's Go Zero are a partner in this. They're not funded by the Department for Education, and they support schools and settings writing their climate action plan. And Sustainable Support for Education is a website that brings everything together, including the Nature Park.
No, not at all. You're going through.
So to summarise, the benefits of taking part for the settings, for the young people, it's that real connection with nature. So they notice things, not just if they're walking their dog with their parents and grandparents or go and play in the park. They make that real connection with nature. So they see it, they feel it, and want to do something about it. As I said, big thing is that physical, mental well-being. I always go for a walk at lunchtime. I always feel better afterwards, and it makes me process information as well as an adult. But we want the young people to feel that and realise that as well. Those digital and green skills, we want the young people to be able to and want to make a difference in the future to act on climate change. So it's really important they get that connection, but they have those skills as well. For the staff in schools and in nurseries and in colleges, it's all free. Every setting in England, it is free to sign up. And high quality resources that are written by colleagues that are ex-teachers and by Natural History Museum colleagues or community scientists. So real top quality stuff, as well as information and activities from partner organisations. We're very aware that sometimes teachers and practitioners don't have the confidence or skills or knowledge to be outside and feel confident that they are doing their job as well. So very much supporting those colleagues and practitioners to do that. On that point, we have 9 regions in England that are supported by 2 members of staff. So in the West Midlands, where I am, it's myself and my colleague Eleanor. So there are colleagues all around England now to support settings along their nature park journey. And as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, taking part in Nature Park supports climate action plans that central government suggests that all settings should have this year. And for nature, as I said, if you added all that space together, it would be twice the size of Birmingham. So huge opportunity for people, young people, schools, school communities to make a real difference in improving biodiversity and nature in England. So they can see what they're doing in their school, their local community, their region, and also in this country, in England. That map that I showed you earlier, you can zoom in, you can put your postcode in there, you can see what you've done, you can see what other schools have done as well. Very much scientific research as well. So I've got 2 colleagues in the Natural History Museum who are doing PhDs on this work. So some of the stuff that young people will be recording will inform what we do in this country in terms of nature conservation. And as it says at the bottom, we want to care for the environment. If we have all those with young people and ourselves, we're going to make a real difference. And that's it. That is me at an event in Shrewsbury Town Football Ground. Any questions? That is our website there, and that is our email. I will stop sharing now and open to any questions.
Martin, I thought that was really one of the most uplifting presentations we've had. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to see how well the education system is doing. That's just
Thank you.
Very reassuring stuff. Thank you. Stuart, would you like to start the ball rolling, please?
Yeah, I would just like to thank Martin for a real great presentation. And it strikes me as though this is the great collaboration in action. Really good. You mentioned that you're measuring the outcomes of your interventions. If so, could you be selling these outcomes as BNG credits?
So that is a good question, Stuart. We have had internal conversations about this. From my limited knowledge, I think one of the challenges would be the unit size, I think. And also, I think when we're having internal conversations about this is in terms of the time scales involved in that. From the little I know, I think in terms of management, you have to sign up to 30 years of management to maintain what's in there. And we think currently there's nothing been signed off as such, that may be a challenge for head teachers in SLT and business managers in schools to do that. We are aware of it, and higher up colleagues are in conversations about that. So I think that awareness is a good thing, but we're a bit wary of that 30-year timescale in terms of that. And like I say, the unit size, it may be an option for where there's a new build school rather than ones that are already making or potentially making relatively small changes because of the cost implication and that ongoing management cost as well.
Okay, thanks.
Martin, for those of us who are not familiar with the term, what was that? Was it BAG?
Yeah, it's BNG, so it's biodiversity net gain. So
sorry, I know what that is. Right, yeah. I just misheard it. Right. Wide open for questions from other people. Anyone keen to come through. Yep, go for it, please, Neil. No, you're on mute, Neil. Neil, you're still on mute. Not yet. No, you're still on mute. Let's see if I can unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. Yeah, that's fine.
Morning, Martin. Good to talk to you again. I understand from our last communication that the schools in Bromyard aren't available for a grant just now, but we have my show coming up in July, and I would very, very much like to put the messages you put across today to the audience who's there. Recognizing you may not be able to come, is there any way can I achieve that? Do you have any assistance, or is there some material you can provide us that we can use?
Yes, Neil, I know who you are now, mate, so apologies. I think as far as I know, I did get back to you, but I will check that. Yeah, it will depend on the time and the day, really, is the honest answer. And also because there is only 2 of us in each region. So the region I cover, geographically, this might be helpful. I'm in Stoke-on-Trent. I cover up to the Peak District and as far down as Hereford and Worcester and either side of that. So we have to be strategic in terms of our support. So depending on what the event is, the short answer is yes. That ideally, because what I feel is that however we can raise awareness of this is the right way to do it. Because there will be people at all events that are parents, grandparents, school teachers with children. We went to an event in Malvern last week, which was a family event. So it was aimed at children under 11. But we spoke to a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, home guidance people as well. So I think the short answer is yes. It just depends. But I will reread what you sent me, Neil. But if you send it me again, then I'll have another look at it. Apologies if I didn't get back to you as well, mate.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we have a series of what we call question times in a marquee, dealing with different subjects during the day. And I'm delighted to say that Ellie Chowns is coming to present one of them. But there's certainly a slot, probably better in the morning, that we could put aside. But yes, I'll obviously be back in touch with you.
Cool. Thank you, Neil.
You've got a follow-on question.
Yes. Just a few questions, really. Is this program open to any school and college?
Yes. So it is.
A lot of the people in the video seem to be little people.
Yeah,
I go up to sort of 6th form.
It does. So to give you a little bit of background, so what we are working on currently to sort of, I think, relaunch is perhaps the right way of describing it, is to make it more appropriate for early years. So it's sort of a one fits all at the start. We're aware that doesn't overly fit with early years. So that's what we're concentrating at the moment to hopefully relaunch in the new academic year. And other areas that is more difficult to engage with is secondary, because it's very much about attainment. We see there are links with GIS, so that mapping side in geography and science. And that is another area that we're going to be looking at after we've looked at early years. And very aware that further education as well is similar to secondary, where a lot of these programs historically and currently fit really well with primary. So that's one thing. The other thing is because we're relatively new in terms of 18 months old, a lot of our marketings and communications aren't at the level we would want them to be at. So it is a lot of where, myself and my colleague Eleanor started the program 6 months before in terms of what we call the pathfinder stage. So working with a certain amount of settings to test what we were doing. So if we've got a really good connection with those, then we'd ask them if they would be able to take part in a case study or a little bit of filming. So hopefully, over the next 3.5 years, 4 years, that we will get to a stage where we are being inclusive in terms of our marketing and communications. We are physically, that is what we are, but in terms of our marketing and communications, what we've got to show, we perhaps aren't there yet.
Okay, thanks. And just a supplemental, are you planning any follow-up? Does this intervention have lasting effects on people? Do they take it through into adult life?
So that is what we're, again, repeating myself to a degree, because we're only 18 months old. Those interventions, we're on sort of the second lot of those, if you like. We are looking to include more surveys, so more surveys in terms of nature conservation, and also in terms of our evaluation to see if they do. So we had a report that was done, I think it was back end of last calendar year, looking at the short-term effects in terms of engagement. I will check if that is available on our website, if it's open for everyone. But we are having currently year-on-year evaluations from an external organisation to see what works, what doesn't, so we can change it in the short term. And then, as far as I'm aware, there will be a final report at some point. We're very hopeful that because we're doing so well in a relatively short time, and it's really important and good stuff, that we will get funded further than the 5 years from the Department for Education. Who knows if that will happen, but colleagues higher up are having those communications all the time. And as long as we're demonstrating it, what we're doing in terms of numbers and that quality, which I think is the important thing, so the numbers and the quality, then we're hopeful we will get funded further than the current 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Ken and Kirsten, I promised to come back to you, but I just thought this was a topical moment to mention to Martin. Have you seen Lydia's question in the chat? Where I think you've sort of almost answered it, but perhaps you could just give a final detail of what proportion of schools have signed up and where are they?
That is a good question. So what I can do, I can share that after this. I know how many schools are in my region. There is 8 other regions, and we do monthly reporting on that. I don't know, apologies that I don't know in terms of how many out of that are eligible to sign up. Everyone's eligible. I know in my region, the West Midlands, we currently have 651 that are signed up. That's including nurseries, colleges, and primaries and secondaries. As I said, in 18 months, I can find that and more than happy to share that in terms of current numbers.
That's wonderful, Martin. Thank you. And then it's still on the topic. I see Joanne's come up with a great question. I've actually written down on my piece of paper, asked my daughter what her school is doing about this, because that's also a private school. But is it open to the private schools?
Yeah, the criteria as such in terms of being able to sign up is that you have a URN, so a unique reference number for your school. So what that means is that you can sign up as anyone can sign up. So as a charity, as an individual can sign up, but to be able to access the mapping and actually do the mapping, you need a URN, a unique reference number that every education establishment should have. So then within our mapping and our reporting and numbers, then we can link it properly. So yes, if you have a URN, you can sign up, very much so. We do work with some, if private schools is the correct term, that do have fantastic grounds, but they are not recorded anywhere. Maybe they are within that organisation, that school, but not centrally. And also we feel there's a huge opportunity there because they've already got fantastic grounds to use them maybe more than they already are, and to be able to share that with other schools locally and nationally, best practice case studies. So yeah, very much so.
Brilliant, thank you. And Ken, my apologies, but you're up now, please.
No problem, thanks. Martin, really interesting project, great one. I've got a family member who runs forest schools for kids in near Bristol. Would there be any connection between the two? Any possible connection?
So yes, is the short answer. I'm a forest school practitioner as well, and a lot of the pathfinders that I mentioned earlier that myself and Ella went into, we were working with the forest school lead. And what tends to happen, we work with forest school lead or an outdoor lead, or if it's higher up, it can be a science lead. So yes, very much. I haven't ran forest school for about 10 years now, but from my experience, it's very much about the young person's, the child's development in terms of self-esteem and responsibility and resilience, which is fantastic. So we see the nature park as maybe that and more in terms of that connection with nature. Not saying it doesn't necessarily happen in forest school, but I think it's a different way of learning. So it is very much an example. When we're working in early years, a lot of the littlies, they always go out all the time, and the practitioners do. So they're outside, but maybe they're not having that real connection with nature because the staff aren't confident or knowledgeable enough to do that. So very much a link, but it is something to add on to that. And we do work with forest school leads as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
Kirsten, good day to you again.
Hello. Actually, the good news is an awful lot of my questions have been answered in the thread, which is fabulous. So thank you. This is a really interesting talk. my question that hasn't quite is if in trying to encourage schools in my local area to join in with this scheme through various avenues, is there any way of letting us know the people that we should talk to? You very kindly outlined the area that you covered, and it wasn't me, so I'm wondering who I should communicate with out east, if that's at all possible.
It is. Apologies. I remember this morning that it wasn't just a West Midlands thing. So apologies. A lot of my presentations are based around that. So yes, there are 9 regions, and my colleagues in the east of England, because you're in Cambridge, are Lewis and Jenny. So if you email me, I can forward that on. There is a page on our website with all the regional addresses on. If I could multitask, I could write it in here. Let's see if I can do this.
Sorry, I should have looked at your website. I didn't mean
Not
to,
at all.
to be
At all.
lazy.
I should have included
I just didn't think
that.
the personal details would be on there, to be honest.
Yeah, how it works, this is very specific, is that we have a regional inbox for each of our regions. So again, I'll try and remember these regions: the East and West Midlands, there's London, the Northwest and Northeast, East of England, Southeast and Southwest. I might have missed one then. Hopefully my colleagues aren't listening to that. How it works is that so the East and the West Midlands are led by LTL. So those email addresses would be East and West Midlands at ltl.org.uk. All the other ones are RHS, led by the RHS. So in terms of Kirsten, the East of England, it will be East of England's Nature Park at rhs.org.uk. Similarly, Northwest would be Northwest Nature Park. But that is on our website, all those emails. And what happens then, one of the teams, so either Janet or Lewis, would pick up on that and decide who's the most appropriate person to support or to help you out with that. Just going a little bit further on that, our role is to support settings. So there is a lot of stuff on our website, and it can be sometimes a little bit difficult to find what the most appropriate bit may be, the mapping guidance and stuff like that. So that is part of our role, to point people in the right direction. We've got stuff saved and we know where to help people, because we're very aware that in any education setting, the two things that they're poor on is time and money. So we want to help them as much as we can with those sort of things.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That's really helpful. Cheers.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Eleanor. That's a big help. Peter, now that you've switched to your part of the world, let's continue, please.
Yes. Martin, I was just looking at your website, and actually was having some difficulty finding where the interactive map is. I have finally found it now. So in terms of pointing to the interactive map, I mean, the whole reason looking for the interactive map was so that I could try to identify or put in my postcode and identify what schools in my area actually I have already signed up. And that doesn't appear to be possible, or am I incorrect?
No, what it does show on the map, Peter, is that if a school signed up and mapped their boundary of their outdoor space, so it doesn't actually show the numbers of schools that are signed up. We have access to that in terms of what schools in your area are signed up. So again, my colleagues Lewis and Jenna would be the ones supporting that, and my colleague Eleanor. Thank you for that, Eleanor. Just put the link into their email address, so they would be the ones to speak to in terms of helping out to finding schools that are already signed up.
So are you saying on the map, which I have now found, I zoomed into my area, and I was getting quite excited because there seemed to be several plots that had been marked on it, only to discover when I actually got even closer, it was just one school. The King's School, which is a private school, had actually kind of plotted all their plots. Are you saying that there will also be other schools which don't actually appear on this map?
Yes. So as a school signs up, they will sign in with their URN, where they are, their address, and you can have more than one teacher or head teacher signed up to one school as well. So that won't show on the map until they have mapped their boundary. So that was the first thing that we asked them to do, is to map their boundary before they do anything else. And there is links on the website how to do that as well. That is relatively simple, coming from a person who's not great at IT.
No, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking that if people are signed up, just having a dot would be a useful starting point, because for people who are now not involved in education, although I have been a teacher for 16 years, I would have actually wanted to know what are my local schools which have actually already signed up. So there's no need for me to approach them because
Sure.
they're doing
Yeah,
it.
I think in the short term, it's getting in touch with my colleagues Lewis and Jenna to be able to do that, to see where they are. And in the medium long term, that is something that I can bring up with our colleagues at Esri and Natural History Museums to see if there's a way we could change that. As I said earlier, we're evolving all the time, improving our resources, including the website. So I can feed that back, Peter. So thank you for that.
Okay, well, thanks.
Typing a message here to somebody. Peter, you still got your hand up. Is that it's now gone? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, please, for Martin? I'm looking at an empty screen at the moment and an empty set of questions in the chat, which sounds like we've exhausted everyone's list of things, which means it was a very comprehensive presentation, Martin. There are no questions left.
Thank you. Yeah, what I would say is please do have a look at our website. I know Ellen's put the link to our regional emails on there, but do have a look on our website. Please do. I'll put our email in here as well. Give myself and Eleanor a shout, and we can point people in the right direction of schools or settings, or my colleagues in your area in terms of your region. Quite happy to do that. Sorry, as you can see, I can't multitask. So yeah, give us a shout on that email, myself, and then I'm more than happy to point in the right direction.
Okay, thank you very much. And if we help Stuart. Well done.
Hi, thanks. I was in a meeting yesterday, and one of the things that came up was how do we get into schools? And several people in the group said they either been ex-teachers or they had been involved in setting up things at schools, and they were saying how difficult it is these days because the curriculum is so tight that the school day just doesn't have enough time in it to allow for extra activities.
Yes. One thing I didn't mention, Stuart, is that ideally, as with a lot of these programs, it would be a whole school approach. So everyone within a school setting will have at least an awareness of this. What we do say is that however a school setting wants to do Nature Park, if you like, is the right way. So initially, as I said earlier, when we were talking about forest school, it could be the forest school lead or the outdoor lead that takes this on. So it could be during lunchtime, eco club, or after school. So that would be an initial thing. And what we are trying to do, so like I say, any setting, however they do it, is the right way. What we are trying to do within our resources is to link them to the curriculum in the best way that we can. So the resources we currently have, as I said, you can search them by key stage, by topic. So there is stuff, information there, almost off the shelf for teachers to take. We're very aware that teachers and settings plan like almost a year advance and things like that. So we are, with our colleagues at Natural History Museum, improving that all the time so we can make it as best and easy for schools and settings to take this on. We're very aware that, like you say, that there is hardly any time in the curriculum to do stuff. So we wanted to make it as real and realistic and usable as possible. So we are continually to evolve, to improve those. In terms of getting into schools, it is a challenge sometimes for ourselves as well. So that's why when I was talking to Neil earlier about events, any way we can raise awareness or make contact or make relationships with anyone that's working in a school is the best way to do it. So a couple of things there. Yeah, we're trying to improve our resources all the time, feedback from practitioners and people on this call, and also making connections so we can get into schools, into settings to raise awareness and support them as much as we can with the relatively limited resources that we've got.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions for Martin, I'd just like to say thank you very much for a really enjoyable and educational presentation, Martin. It was brilliant. Really liked it. Thank you very much. And next week, our presentation will be from Gary, who's going to tell us all that Corsham is doing to rejuvenate our environment. So do ask you all to pitch in and help us out there. And if no one else has got anything, let us say good day to you all and go and enjoy your Easter holidays that I'm sure you're all fascinatingly enjoying. Take care all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
Greg. Cheers all. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.